All right, people, what is going on? This is episode 573 of the First and Frame Rate Show. I am Via Baller. Over here, we talk about Georgia Southern and Atlanta Falcons football. Not much Georgia Southern talk. It's the spring game came and gone. Some guys transferred out, and it's just not much to talk about to probably midsummer. That's when the season is probably going to be starting up. It will start up. They're going to be playing the Citadel, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But right now, it's more Atlanta Falcons stuff. Now, we just drafted Clark Phillips III. And, and we drafted Drake London last year. Now, these two went head-to-head when both were in college, when one was at Utah, the other was at USC. And it was a very good matchup. I'm going to give you the stats, and I'm going to give you some thoughts about the matchup. And pretty much give you my opinion about both of these guys going to be on the same team. I think it's really cool. So we're going to get into that, and we'll just go from there. If this is your first time here, welcome. I could be found on YouTube and Rumble. I'm also on Anchor, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. I want to thank you guys for the enormous amount of support. The viewership is excellent on YouTube. The last podcast episode did great on YouTube. It did pretty well on Rumble as well. And the podcast avenue, you guys always support over there. I really appreciate it. I will tell you this, though. If you are on one of these platforms, subscribe to the second one as well, because there's times that one platform may have the podcast, the other one may not. It just happens. Like sometimes it won't show up on YouTube, but it'll be on Apple or Spotify or whatever. I don't know why. It's weird like that sometimes. Also, my website, firstandframerates.com. Check that out. That is the hub of all the information on the podcast. You can go over there, support, or whatever the case may be. And you can also follow me on Twitter, where I talk about things that don't make it into the show. So let's go ahead and get into this. Look, everybody is caught up on certain things when it comes to this team. One thing stands out for other fans. That's just how it is. Some people look at pass rush. Some people look at the quarterback situation. Some people look at the trenches. But one thing that I love to talk about when it comes to like football in general, I love talking about DB and wide receiver interactions. I love that whole aspect. Ever since I was a kid, when I knew like I wanted to be a wide receiver or a cornerback. That's one thing. If I played football, that's what I wanted to be. And I always look at the matchups between the two because I find it very fascinating how a guy can defend a receiver and how a receiver can get around a defensive back. Nowadays, it's kind of watered down with all the can't touchy feel, 5 yards holding, pass interference. It's kind of dumbed down. But when you look at this matchup between Clark Phillips and Drake London, or Drake London and Clark Phillips, whatever you want to name it as, these two guys went head-to-head, and Clark Phillips held his own fairly well. Now, in this game, Utah ended up beating, I think this is the game that Utah ended up beating USC pretty bad. I think it was like 42-26. He got blown out. USC couldn't stand. This is like pretty much the downtime of USC. Right before the coach they have now, that's from Oklahoma. I can't remember his name because I don't care for him. And right after Coach Clay Helton left, and he's with Georgia Southern now. So this was like the time where they really wasn't all that, So this is a really interesting matchup here because Drake London ended up having 16 receptions for 162 and one touchdown. I think this was the game where he leaped over somebody to run in for a touchdown. It was that highlight that but with that highlight, which honestly, I'm going to show these two guys matched up. There's a video out there. I'm going to put the link down in the description. You can check that out. But when you look at this matchup, even with Drake London at 6'4", 210 or 6'5", 210, wherever you want to put him at. And, Clark Phillips at 5'10", 180. He held his own. There was times he had some pass breakups. He made Drake London not run the route properly. He got the ball out of Drake London's hands, made the quarterback throw an errant throw because it was like not necessarily a viable option to throw towards Drake London because, this kid, this guy, Clark Phillips, is a ball hawk. This guy is nice. If you've seen his highlights, you would know. And even in this game between the two, they played very well against each other. Like I said, 16 catches, but at the same time, I think most of those catches, I want to say some of those catches was not on Clark Phillips. I didn't watch the whole game, so I don't know. But nevertheless, I saw some highlights where he held his own against a bigger wide receiver. So when you look at these two kids play against each other, you see the matchup. Like I said, the link will be down in the description if you want to watch that. I think it's like a minute and a half or something like that. You see these two guys go at it, and it's like basically iron sharpening iron. These two guys are on the same team. It is a phenomenal thing to see when you see both of these guys play very well at the highest level in college football and play to the point where they look like they're NFL ready. And look at them now. They're both in the NFL. And you got two guys that want to definitely feed off each other for years to come. I mean, they're going to be practicing against each other, and they're going to be going at each other one-on-one through practice and drills and training camp and all that other stuff. It's going to be a phenomenal thing because you're going to see two guys basically get better as their careers progress. Now, this just goes back to tell you, and it shows you the pedigree of Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith. Hell, we can talk about Kyle Smith now. We talked about Kyle Smith last episode, and honestly, I didn't know much about him, and I fell in love with the way he talked because he knows, positions. He knows what this team needs, and look like they're getting some really good players. So this is a situation where these two guys are going to be in a situation where they're familiar with each other. They cut from the same cloth, basically, playing out in the Pac-12, and they're going to come in and they're going to be grinding. Like, I know Drake London, even with his first year in the NFL, his first year in the NFL, he did pretty well for him. So I'm going to see if I can pull up his NFL stats right here, if this will pull up. Yeah, his NFL stats, he had 72 catches for 866, 4 touchdowns. And you got to understand, we didn't have proper quarterback play. He started to come on later on in the season when he played, when Desmond Ridder came in, because the last 4 games, he had 7 catches for 70 yards, 7 catches for 96. He had, in the Arizona game, he had 5 for 47, but that last game, he had 6 catches for 120. So he came on like later on in the season, and before then, he wasn't really doing much of anything. The Pittsburgh game, he did pretty good. That was 6 for 95, and that was the last game Marcus Mariota played, so that was actually pretty interesting. But before then, he hasn't had anything. He had 86 yards in the Rams game, and that was week 2. Outside of that, he had very slow pedestrian numbers. Even at one game, he only had 1 catch for 2 yards, which was abysmal. You don't give a guy like that less of a target. He only had 3 targets. You need to give him 10, 11, 12 targets. And when you do give him that many targets, even if you give him as much as 8, he's going to be able to be over 90-something yards. Now, Clark Phillips hasn't played a down in the NFL yet. So what does that mean? You don't have much on him. You just don't. You don't have much on him right now. So it's not much you can really say. Only thing I know is in college, he had 9 interceptions. 4 of them was pick 6. The dude is about that life when it comes to covering the field, covering cornerbacks. And he said, like in his press conference, he could do zone as well as man. And if you look at the footage that I put down in the description, he can do both. He does a pretty good job, and he played very well against Drake London. So you're building a young nucleus with this team, a young nucleus. We talk about the free agencies that we brought in on defense, but the young guys coming in, Drake London, Clark Phillips, Bijan Robinson, you can even put Tyler Algier, Kyle Pitts, Desmond Ridder, just the guys that's on offense, the nucleus is right there. Then you turn around and you look at the defensive side. You got Arnold Ebiketie. You have you got who else you had on defense? Oh, Zach Harrison. I'm sorry. Then you got like Clark Phillips. Then you got DeMarco Hellmans. You got a lot of young guys. Troy Anderson. So you got a lot of young people. And we brought some talent in with the cap space, and we're supposed to have 80-something million left going into next year. We're going to be all right. 2 offensive guards, Matthew Bergeron and Javon Gwynn, which I heard some praises about Javon Gwynn, which is really interesting because, the 7th round picks, you don't hear much about them until they're actually on the field. But nevertheless, iron sharpening iron here. You got a receiver and a defensive back who's fairly familiar with each other. They're already probably planning on what they're going to do when it's time to work out, how they're going to work together to get better when they go up against these other teams in the NFC South, the NFC, and even in the NFL. It's going to be a very interesting season. Now, I will say this. I know there's going to be a lot of people, and I know I'm going to say this right now. Some of you new Philadelphia Eagle fans are going to still be watching this team. Don't lie. You are. I'm not saying that we're going to be doing something nice or we're going to be winning all these games because we have to wait and see. But it's going to be, this is going to be overwhelmingly interesting to see what this young team could do. Because say what you want about all the stuff in the past. You knew the problems with Marcus Mariota. You knew Matt Ryan didn't have anybody to throw to. You knew before that what, Dan Quinn was dealing, what we had with Dan Quinn. 28-3. All this stuff prior to that, up until right now, it's a totally different situation. And people know it. People have the biases and want to go to look at another team because they're college players or at another team. I get it. But when you look at guys like a Clark Phillips, a Desmond Ridder, when you look at Drake London and all these other young guys, that are here, you can't help but to look at these young guys and be like, you know what? I want to see what they're going to be about. Even though I may be looking somewhere else, because I know some of y'all are looking somewhere else, quote unquote, new fans. But y'all going to be watching what this team does. And I think it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to do this and do that, because I don't know. To be honest with you, just one thing about being a Falcons fan, you've been let down so many times, you don't necessarily know what to expect at this point. But I will say this. This is going to be a very interesting, and actually, it's going to be a fun time to watch these young guys grow up to be something, because it may not be this year coming up. It may not be the year after that. Well, it may be the year after that. But it may be one of these few years, next 3 or 4 years, where this team can make some serious noise. They basically, in my opinion, I think they're literally maybe 3 or 2 years behind what the Bengals were, or what the Bengals are, or 2 or 3 years behind what the Eagles are. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. They're on their way on the up and up. I'm not, there's no way you can look at this team and say they're on a decline based on what we've had the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, that's kind of crazy. So that's all I got. If you like this commentary, hit the like button, share this podcast, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know what you guys think, man. I could be found on YouTube and Rumble. I'm also on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts. I want to thank you guys once again, man. Thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you guys think about this matchup right here. I link down in the description if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, let me know in the comment section what you guys think about these two here. Iron is sharpening iron. What do you think about the rest of the nucleus of the team? What do you think about the makeup of this team? I think we have something pretty special here, but it's yet to be seen. Well, I'm going to get up out of here. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I will definitely be back on Friday with another episode. Y'all take it easy and y'all be blessed. Peace.